suspension of the KyivPost publication. And quite recently, there was a broad discussion on Suspilne TV, and we believe that this topic deserves further discussions. And actually, the event is quite outstanding. There is a suspension of the English-speaking publication in Ukraine, which had been existent for more than 26 years. And their decision about suspension or reloading, as it was explained, was taken more than a week ago. And during that week, we have been seeing and hearing a lot of explanations about that. That's why today we have invited representatives from the journalist community, and they will express their support to the colleagues. We have Anna Humeniuk, Olga Tokariuk, then we'll have Natalia Ligachova from Detector media publication. We also have Natalia Myroniuk, founder of the Hromadske International. Also online, we will have Sebastien Gobert from France online, and I think it's now time to give the floor to Anna Myroniuk, a journalist from the KyivPost, and Anna will describe how it all happened. On Monday, November the 8th, so we came to work, and we came early on Monday to start our business week. And usually on Mondays we have the traditional meeting at 11 o'clock. First it was delayed, then the meeting at least started, and the chief editor informed us that he is going to be retired this and then we have heard that 50 employees are dismissed from this very moment. Of course, there's launched very vivid discussion. We tried to ask questions why and how, and after the meeting, without a top manager, we came together, that is without Mr. Bonner, and we discussed it between ourselves, the community of journalists, and decided to persuade not to close the edition in general, because it has a rather long history and successful history. And during that discussion, we had drafted a letter to the newspaper owner, Mr. Kivan, and asked him to implement alternative scenarios, either to sell the newspaper or to find other possibilities to extend the functioning of the newspaper. A bit later, when Mr. Kivan had received our letter, sometime after, we had received a call from him, a telephone call from him, and he explained that he did not wish neither to sell the publication nor to continue its operations. And after that, we went public and publicized that theory. That whole story. The story was as follows: in mid-October, Anna Ratare from Odessa from Odessa had written a post on her Facebook that from that moment on, she became the editor-in-chief of the Ukrainian language KyivPost publication. And thus, we have learned that first, we are going to have Ukrainian version of the KyivPost, and that even the editor-in-chief was appointed. That struck us very much, and we could not grasp how that could happen without any prior information, without any notice, neither to us nor, what is more impressive, to the Brian Bonner, our editor-in-chief. Soon after that events, on October 14th, when we had read that information, Mr. Brian Bonner went to Odessa for discussions with Mr. Kivan. And after that meeting, Mr. Bonner persuaded us that that was just a misunderstanding, and Anna Ratare, in case of willing to become our colleague in the KyivPost, she would submit her application and would be interviewed, and then upon assessment of her qualifications, she would be allowed to become our colleague. Later on, we have heard that the newspaper owner, Mr. Kivan, had a wish to open the Ukrainian version of the publication, and we decided that we were capable to do that, and we had even developed the concept of this future Ukrainian version, and Mr. Bonner even made a decision how that could be done, and we made a plan of first several publications. We have offered the main highlights for the news releases. We even projected what people could be appointed into which positions, and we also made an announcement that we were looking for the editor-in-chief for Ukrainian version of KyivPost. And actually, all the journalist community in Ukraine was familiar with that, our plans to have a Ukrainian version of KyivPost. So when we are blamed now that we hampered the intent to open Ukrainian version of KyivPost, that's not true, because we made necessary steps to launch the Ukrainian version of KyivPost, and then 3 weeks after the first publication of the post on Facebook, which I mentioned, and when we asked Having heard that we are as English version closed and only Ukrainian version would be opened, we have heard that most probably Miss Rotary would become the editor-in-chief of the Ukrainian version of KyivPost. Now the question to you, how do you think whether the Kyiv Post was all that events were a result of the intention to make an optimization of business, because the Kyiv Post is actually a business. I cannot answer your question. The issue is that there were no transparency, there were no proper communication. And the second, the interference of Mr. Kivan in the human resource policy of the publication, and according to our statute, the decisions about appointments and about qualifications of the staff was done improperly, without powers, without involvement of Mr. Bonner. Actually, the owners of newspapers have no right to interfere into the policy of the publications that they own. I would like to remind you that you may ask questions in our Q&A session. Dear friends, I have to inform you that we invited representatives of the owner, but they ignored our invitation, and trying to find the answer to this question, why the newspaper was closed, and was closed after 26 years of successful and quality work. We invited journalists to discuss why this had happened. Natalia, let us discuss that.
It's weird. We have a media discussion around Kyiv Post where we discuss whether the owner has the right, whether Kyiv Post is efficient, and what was with Ukrainian language version. But this discharge of the editorial office staff is the pressure from the owner. So it doesn't matter. Of course, we should understand the reasons to speak that there was some pressure from power or from other sides, but this fact of discharge in this way is the pressure, even if this is for preservation of some business interests, his own business interests. So in this case, we see that Akhmetov, Kolomoisky, Openchuk, the owners, if they want to fire someone, they believe that this is okay, and changes are working like this. The editorial office is working in accordance with its regulations, and we understand and we remember how Kyiv Post was bought several years ago. We were speaking with Brian. We spoke about what was going on with the new owner, and Kyiv Post was bought on some conditions that it will remain independent. This is not some niche media for some special interests of the owner. So this is the fact. And I would like to repeat. Of course, we should find out the reasons to speak about the pressure from the power, but we should not mix these things. These are different things. Otherwise, we won't be able to respond properly. And in this case, we believe that this situation with KyivPost is underestimated. We should deal with it properly. And also, we lack information in order to properly understand whether there is some pressure from power. And I would like to say that I follow the situation, I study the situation. I have the reason to say, because I spoke with people in the market and they say that there are reasons to speak about possible political pressure. This is about concrete people, not about some power, but concrete people in power. Maybe some deputies or officials, politicians, then we may say about this pressure from power. So these are critical things. We should not stop. We see that there are appointments, the appointment of the new editor-in-chief. Unfortunately, we do not have him here today. And it will be difficult to provide guarantees of lack of bias. And it would be difficult to trust the owner in this case. Also about the role of this newspaper, the role of KyivPost. Many journalists do not clearly understand the importance of this news outlet. I have been working for 5 years for Hromadske international news outlet, and we understand that we lack such news outlets in Ukraine. And we speak about disinformation by Russia, and we should not lose independent Ukrainian voice in the world. This is a trusted media outlet. This is a loss of some shield for Ukraine. In many cases, when we face some confusion, we should have a source where to come to. So the KyivPost was the media that provided independent news to foreigners. This is a trusted source. Yes, we have some translated media sources, but this is an independent, well-promoted media outlet. It is promoted through Twitter, through other media, and the situation is really serious now. The situation is ongoing, and we need time to find out what happened. Maybe some people provided some interview, maybe they will create some team, but in recent years, I do not remember such closures of quality news outlets. There are some individual instances only during 10 years. So I would like to add, I would like to say that we should be really cautious. There were some conspirology theories, and we should not promote these conspiracy theories. We should not add to the truth. So the paper was closed, and maybe there was some political pressure. This is not about conspirology. We should first understand situation properly and then provide proper information to the public. I would like to add to what Natalia said. I have been working in Ukrainian international journalism. I provided information to Ukrainians about the world. Now I speak about Ukraine for Italian media, for a Spanish news outlet. And I would like to say that this is really important to have this Kyiv Post newspaper here, because many people underestimate the importance of this news outlet. It is underestimated by journalists and by the audience. And some people ask, who reads this? And this is not a big loss, but I'm shocked by this. This is a big loss for Ukraine, as Natalia mentioned, for journalists and for Ukraine on the whole, and for each Ukrainian, because it is important to have powerful international support in order not to be one-on-one with Russia with these challenges. And Ukraine should speak in its own voice, and this voice should be heard in the world. These should be voices not only of politicians, but also there should be independent media that would provide this voice. For more than 20 years, this news outlet remained, and it had a great reputation, trust. It has the trust of our foreign audience, and maybe Anya would tell us about the number of subscribers. And there was a proper subscription. News were provided through the Twitter, and there was a newspaper, and the foreign diplomats, they read this paper, and different businessmen used this paper, different audience. And this was an important source of information about Ukraine. And it was an independent news outlet. There were attempts to create some media, Ukraine Today, for example, and they started their broadcasting and broadcasted for several years after Russian aggression started. Of course, it is important to have such media. Unfortunately, it was closed, but we should have independent media, not only those that were financed by the state. And this information, it should be checked, because this is a state media outlet, and this is voice of the government. And here we have independent news outlet, and power changed, and the media remained independent and covered the news properly. And we need such independent media. This is a big loss for Ukraine, for Ukrainian media market. And about the relaunch of Kyiv Post, we hear the assurance that this paper won't disappear, that we will have new people in it. And Comfort, he wrote that it will be really difficult to find these people, because it is difficult to find highly qualified journalists, especially for English-speaking paper. Not many journalists have good level of English to write in English, to edit in English, in order to provide proper information to foreigners. And these should be people who know English properly, and they should be quality journalists who know about journalist standards, who have international experience. I know that the majority of the staff in Kyiv Post, they were the students of the best universities in the West. They perfectly know English, and they know about international journalism standards. So this is about professional journalists, and this is about quality English. And this will be really difficult, especially taking into account this tray of scandals that is connected to this closure of the Kyiv Post. So the embassies, they provide the statements. The U.S. Embassy, German Embassy, British Embassy, they provided their statements concerning the situation. I'll give the floor to French journalist Sebastien Gobert, and he's going to speak Ukrainian today to support us. Please, Sebastien, can you hear us? Yes, we hear you well. Thank you for joining us. About closure of KyivPost and discussions around the situation, how it is perceived by international journalist community. I would like to repeat what Olga Natalia said. This is a big loss. KyivPost was a driver of journalism in Ukraine, and I know the KyivPost starting 2011, and I know that there was also some pressure on it. And I provided the first reporting about the conflict between Brian Bonner and the Ministry of Agriculture in times of Yanukovych's rule. And Brian, he dealt properly with this conflict, and Brian won in this case, and the KyivPost survived despite the revolution, despite elections. In this sense, KyivPost was much more than typical paper for expats. There are some papers that deal with lifestyle, culture, tourism, and KyivPost was the real reflection of Ukraine. And this is a big loss. When I say that this is a big loss, you all know that the firing of staff didn't get into international headlines. The KyivPost was not a big media outlet, and there were not many people in its staff, and this paper didn't brought money, they said. But for Ukraine, this is about the indicator in its landscape, media landscape. In this sense, this shows that the media is less about investigation, less about politics, and journalists, they need to think more and more about communication and PR. And there are less risks. And I was speaking about this issue of communication. This case, this loss of the KyivPost, this is a part of a rather difficult situation in the media sphere of Ukraine. We have seen some pressure on the national broadcaster, for example, Suspilne. And this is another bad sign. And I would like to say that in Ukraine and in the Western Europe, I won't say that in Ukraine you have bad situation and in France we have a good situation. Media landscape of France is in the hands of 10 billionaires. these are our oligarchs, and we see that in France there are many problems because of this, and there is problem concerning presidential elections, disinformation, but now we are speaking about Ukraine, and we have here in Ukraine the media landscape that should be independent and free. This is about international image of Ukraine, and I agree with Natalia and Olga. The Kyiv Post was the defender of Ukraine against the Russian aggression, and it promoted Ukraine as a modern country, as a country under reform. And the Kyiv Post, as the news outlet, was really important. Now we do not have it, and Ukraine remains with a big deficit of international recognition. We do not have Ukraine today. Kyiv Weekly, it was lost long time ago. Hromadske International changed a lot. What remains? Russia Today, RT, Sputnik, Moscow Times, and other news outlets. So this is a big question for Ukraine, and when there is revolution or a new stage of war, it will be really difficult for a foreign audience to find objective quality information about Ukraine. And in the end, I would like to say that I understand that the Kyiv Post will be relaunched, but Olga said that this will be difficult to find quality journalists to work in the editorial office. I would like to say that this will be really difficult. So the Sona may fire the staff of 50 people in one moment. I do not know what will happen. So this loss of Kyiv Post is really a big one. Thank you very much, Sebastien.
Thank you for bringing me to the next topic, which I would like to pose to our speakers. Of course, as we understand the image consequences, the image-like consequences would happen after there's a closure. And how do you think what these consequences might be? That is the reputation damage. I would like to add and comment why KyivPost was important. Our motto, our logo was Ukraine's was important, and traditionally the KyivPost was a source of information for diplomats, for business associations, for experts, for foreign analysts, for international communities, which had been looking on Ukraine with the eyes of KyivPost, through lenses of KyivPost. That's why more than 200 media, including CNN, The Guardian, Libération, Punch, they reflected that fact about closure of KyivPost in their news releases. And now the reputational losses, what she mentioned. by now, I only described what happened inside the newspaper and that non-interference of the owner into the policy, into the attitudes inside the newspaper was improper. I have this newspaper dated November 6th. In this newspaper, we have an article. This very article, this is criticism about Miss Irina Venediktova, chief prosecutor of Ukraine. This article disappointed Miss Venediktova, and upon this publication, she invited the editor-in-chief into her office and criticized us very much for the position. She condemned the criticism and threatened to go to court. Afterwards, the situation was negotiated, discussed, and calmed down. So the conflict went into the so-called frozen stage. This happened a year ago in October 2020. Now September 2021, September 3, 2021, the Kyiv Post journalists again printed the article criticizing the pace of reforms and the performance of the chief prosecutor, where they again criticized the performance of Ms. Venediktova. After some time, Ms. Venediktova had launched some investigations against Mr. Advan Kivan, the owner of the newspaper, and after some time, that investigation was closed, and this I say upon the information of Mr. Bonner. During the years of our existence, we criticized Mr. Akhmetov, Mr. Kolomoisky, Mr. Arsen Avakov about money laundering done by the oligarchs and people in power. We described the slow pace of reforms or absence of reforms. We wrote about the Medvedchuk, about Poroshenko, about Medvedchuk again. What I want to say that we used to be a very loud voice in Ukraine, and we criticized people in power, we criticized the oligarchs, and we followed the highest standards of journalism. We invited both sides to a communication. And what do I want to say? That Ms. Venediktova had all the possibilities to raise her voice and provide her vision of the topics, and we always tried to reach her for interviews. And moreover, after all the publications, we tried to involve the chief prosecutor's office, to involve them into communication, tried to invite her to give a big interview to us, to explain her position. That's why the pressure from power was not new to us. We experienced many times communication with the MPs who threatened to us to go to court, etc. Although it may look like a paradox, but the biggest harm and the biggest loss from the Kyiv Post closure is for the people in power who are in Kyiv. Currently, we are trying to fight with Russia in the east against Russian aggression in the east, and we have been having reforms with more successful, less successful, etc. But against that dark background, nevertheless, it was possible to ask questions to the prosecutor in chief, to the chief prosecutor in the country. And that created more or less optimistic picture about democracy in the country, but unless it becomes absolutely not possible to ask questions to the chief prosecutor, it looks like Belarus or other authoritative country. And currently, the president of Ukraine states that he is waiting for the investors to come. How can you expect to attract new investors who would see that there is no democratic, independent media in the country? And in this situation, the loss of English-speaking independent publication is a huge reputational loss. On the other hand, for the owner of this newspaper, this is a big loss too, because when you are threatened with a lawsuit, usually the owners keep saying, okay, you want to sue us, please do this, and we will win the litigation because we are right, actually. And when in this very case we observe how the owner of the newspaper demonstrates a huge weakness, and this poses him in extremely weak position, and this undermines his business reputation, and this undermines the trust to him in the eyes of other investors. And this is true even if we put aside the losses for the Ukrainian media market. Then about expenses, Kyiv Post did much to earn money, to not to be losing in terms of finance. On the other hand, all of us clearly understand that in today's media market, it is almost impossible to earn much money, and actually the owner could never expect to earn money on media publications. On the other hand, this newspaper was not in losses. It was capable to pay off, and this brings us to idea then this is not the issue about commercial profits, and that team that worked in the Kyiv Post, it was a quality team, and on the other hand, it was not very expensive. They fully realized their social function. Before giving the floor to other speakers, I would like to give the floor to Ms. Natalia Ligachova. Natalia, can you hear us? Natalia, we would like to hear your comments about the situation around Kyiv Post, whether we may decide that there was any pressure from power. I would like to put aside all the euphemisms and support our colleagues who assume that the owner had closed the newspaper, not because he just went mad, but because he felt a lot of pressure from the prosecutor general of Ukraine, who is a trustee of the president, and currently it's a very popular phenomenon when people in power who in this or that way persecute the media channels, they nevertheless continue to blame the neighboring institution, that is the presidential office, blames the prosecutor general and etc. On the one hand, in the situation of war, it is dangerous to blame the country administration. On the other hand, you should balance, balance the doses of criticism with the need to defend the country. But in this case, we clearly observe that there's very closure, the reputational damage is obvious. Even in this case, in the situation of a war, when you try not to criticize the country's authorities too much, but you cannot avoid criticism against corruption, nepotism, etc. And now, in this situation, we have to unite the forces of Ukrainian journalists and international journalist community and express our resistance to this pressure. which we feel. And I think it's a good time to create a movement which might be similar to the Stop Censorship movement, which existed some time ago. How do you think how it is possible to convince the authorities that the closure of independent media would not resolve the problems of authorities which they are striving to resolve, closing the media? We should remember that this war split society into two parts, into those who believe that the authorities and people in power should not be criticized in the times of war, and others who believe that we should criticize the authorities irrespectively of the war. And now it's the right time to stand for the common values. While common values, actually, these are high standards of journalism, and the journalists community in Ukraine always had been very diverse, and nevertheless, the values united us all the time. And this is the proper moment when we have recollect this fact that we should be united with our values. We should get united to stand for the high standards of our profession. Olga, I would like to add, I would like to draw your attention to the timing, to this very moment. Was it the right moment to close this newspaper?
If we look at foreign media and social media on Twitter, foreigners who are interested in Ukraine, a lot of attention is paid to Ukraine because Russia is bringing up forces to the border, and Antony Blinken declaration about the new threat from the Russian Federation, declaration of the European Union and Great Britain will bring 600 soldiers in order to stop Russia to continue its aggression. These are declarations at the official level. Previously, these were some sources, intelligence information. Now these are declarations voiced by top officials in the US and the European Union and Great Britain that there is a serious threat in this winter, that Russian aggression may increase and they may attack Ukraine. So there is focus on Ukraine, and for Ukraine it is critical to have the opportunity to provide its voice abroad, not only through digest of the office of the president. This should be the voice of foreign media as well. And we should not lose the steam of the Kyiv Post, who independently communicate about what is going on in Ukraine. This is shot in the leg. So we should properly communicate. We should not destroy such a news outlet at this moment. And one more thing. This may look a different topic, but this crisis at Belarus and the Polish border, this is also about declarations of Ukrainian officials that this situation may touch upon Ukraine, and this is one of the scenarios. And the situation will be followed, and the position of Ukraine and position of Ukrainian journalists here, they're important. So now journalists, foreign journalists, they have better access to Belarus border, not to Polish border, because they do not allow to highlight what is going on there. So the criticism of Belarus and Poland, they are the same in the media. So Belarus, they provide opportunity for journalists to communicate with migrants, and Poland do not allow journalists to the border, and their power looks like non-democratic. unfriendly to the freedom of speech and other problems with the freedom of speech in Poland. So Ukrainian power should have a broader look on the world. It's not only about the closure of the paper. We should look at a broader international context about what is going on in the world. And we should always understand that independent media is the basis for democracy. Democracy is the biggest value for Ukraine. If we lose freedom of speech and democracy, we will lose Ukraine. Do we have questions to speakers, please? Maybe you would like to get personal comments from them later on. About final remarks from the speakers, please. I would like to start. I would like to say that people write to us that not everything is lost, and the staff of KyivPost, they create initiative Save KyivPost, it is called. And please, Anna, tell us about it to allow the audience to support you. We would like to support you. I would like to speak about the future and to make several remarks about the KyivPost that will be open without KyivPost team and about our plans for the future. First, I would like to say that I fully agree with Olga that KyivPost was a very important voice in the West. Our politicians, our current power is vulnerable to criticism. Not only the criticism from Ukrainian media, but from the English language media that voice these things for foreign audience. I would like to focus on this. That's why they shot in their own leg, because their own convictions and concerns about their personal image, they put it higher than the interests of Ukraine and the free press. Now about the KyivPost and its relaunch, as the owner and top managers call it, and about our own plans. First, about the KyivPost of Kivan. First, I have concerns. I've told you about what we've provided, that we were critical and honest in our criticism of power, business, and opposition. We carried out investigations. We were a real watchdog, as they say, in the Ukrainian media market. But whether the KyivPost, relaunched by Mr. Kivan, whether they provide us criticism of power, I have doubts about it, because Mr. Kivan, in his interview to Interfax, he said that media, they should motivate everyone to do something good. This is a good opinion, but this is not our main task. Our main task is to identify corruption and abuse of power, and to follow, and monitor the power. And the taxpayers, they hired these people in power, and we should monitor that they implement the authority without abuse. And I believe that I have grounded concerns concerning whether the new KyivPost correspond to standards of quality journalism that was started by the KyivPost 26 years ago. I would like to mention that Mr. Kivan, in this interview to Interfax and in communication with the journalist of the KyivPost, he said he called on us to be softer, milder, not to criticize the power so hard. But we do not perceive this seriously, but facts remain facts. That's why, unfortunately, it's a pity for me to think about the future of KyivPost with Mr. Kivan and new CEOs, and I have concerns that this KyivPost will be used to serve business and political interests of the owner. I do not want to trust in this, but I hope that my beliefs won't come true, but there are such risks and such concerns. Now about our own plans. Today we declared about entering into the partnership with the media consulting organization and the Ukraine, Genomics it is called, and we launch our own media outlet. This will be a new product. We won't go into detail right now, but we have a team of 30 fired KyivPost staff, and they are actively working now on planning on development of business model in order to be a media outlet that would support itself to earn money. And we speak with our partners to get grants and investment. Today we launched our media newsletters, and we now assure our community that despite this firing, we feel that we are still obliged to serve our community and to provide quality news about Ukraine. And we plan that these newsletters will be daily, and this was the first day. And I would like to say that about new chief editor-in-chief, Olga Tokariuk, is coming back, and this person has been working here Post for 10 years, and she was the deputy of Brian Bonner since 2017 till 2017, and she will be our new editor-in-chief. And what will be the title of your news outlet? We do not have it now. We will inform you later on this. So you we, of course, are ready to support you. Now, final remarks. Natalia Humeniuk first. I would like to address everyone. First, we should see the broader context concerning what is going on about freedom of speech, and we should not dilute responsibility. I'm speaking about concrete people. To raise this issue, we should have this information. At the moment, I lack some data. We have some reliable sources, but in order to make some actions, we should have more information, more evidence should be provided. So there are reasons to speak about pressure at different levels, and we should not lift responsibility from the owner. When we are searching some evidence, there is clear responsibility. He is responsible. This has already happened. There was pressure, and the staff was fired. And we should have questions to him. And later on, after relaunch, we will continue. And also, there is news about the relaunch, and I would like to call on those who are interested to support us. This is a difficult story. English language news outlet in Ukraine cannot be a business. This is a mission that should be supported. It is difficult to create a news outlet not during revolution, but in some time when not all the attention is focused on this. So even minimal support is needed. I mean, financial support. Enthusiasm is great, but in order to create the startup, no matter how many people there are, this will cost money. It is difficult to get it from the foreign donors, and this is a weird story. This is a story about Ukraine. Why foreigners should finance all this? This is our case, and we should have this support, maybe not as an investment, because I believe that this was an example, this is anti-example, but concerning the KyivPost. But we need some money from Ukrainian business, and we should get united. The journalists who work on this topic, they should get united, and Ukraine should be the joint front in this. All those who work with the English-speaking audience. Thank you. Now, Olga. I would like to wish success to my colleagues. I'm really glad that despite what happened, you are really motivated to work further, and I hope that you will get great support, and thank you very much for your work. Final remark, next speaker, please. I would like to stress that we should understand that this is not the only example, and I wish success to the Kyiv Post, and we should be really vigilant to the situation in Ukraine, especially what is about public broadcasting. We should try to help Ukrainian power to understand that democracy is not possible without independent press. Thank you very much for joining us, Ukraine Crisis Media Center. We are also expressing our support to the Kyiv Post, and this video will be in the open access on our YouTube channel, and we'll have photos on the Flickr, and we have QR codes in the hall, and based on the results of this discussion, we will have a text for those who like to read more than to watch some long videos. Thank you very much. I wish success to the Kyiv Post team and health to all our audience. Until the next time, goodbye. Thank you.